Hi there, I'm Davio, your podcast host at Future Forward. I'm here with Nicolas Christiaen, co-founder and co-CEO at Donna. Hi, Nicolas, how are you?
Hey, Davio. Very good today.
You quickly before you said co-CEO. What does that mean?
That I actually have another co-founder and also co-CEO called Jonas de Pre. And actually we met just 1 year ago. Like it's pretty much our first anniversary. And both of us were sort of swerving around in the Ghent ecosystem after his exit of Daltix and my exit of Cashforce. And very, I would say, randomly we met each other because we were actually testing both the same medical device. It was a sugar meter
Okay.
actually. So we had it on our shoulder, and we were doing both personal training with the same personal trainer. And he actually said like, "Hey, but I recognize that device from who is that?" And he said like, and I said, well, that's so he actually said, yeah, it's Jonas de Pre. And I said, I don't know him, but I'm curious why he was testing it. So we started to talk. 45 minutes into the conversation, both of our wives said like, who are you talking to? Like so long. So it was very fast that we got along very well. And when he was talking about his past in retail, FMCG, he was telling about all his store visits, and I was busy with a new sales tech idea, and very quickly our ways converged. And the only way that I would say was logical to work together was just as co-CEOs. We would go 2 times as fast. He has had the CEO role in his previous company, myself too. Very complementary skills, and it's immediately, I would say,
Sounds like a bromance.
Yeah, we didn't need to think about it.
All right, cool. A bit about you, Cashforce. You mentioned it already. So before you co-founded Donna and swerved around in Ghent, you did Cashforce.
Yeah.
What was Cashforce, and what did you exited, and can you tell a bit more about it?
Sure. So basically, already from my youth, I was doing software programming. That was actually for my dad. So very early onwards, I said like, hey, building, I would say, solutions in software, that's something I like. But obviously, when you enter university, actually, I did something completely different. I was sort of trained to build bridges, but I didn't like that too much. So,
as in civil engineer,
civil
building
engineering,
bridges?
indeed,
Okay.
focusing on electromechanics. To be very honest, very quickly onwards there, I realized like, let's go back to really what my passion was. But I made a detour through finance, because that was also a topic I didn't know anything about. And in my detour, I got to, I would say, assist CFOs of private equity portfolio companies. And they are typically concerned about working capital, about cash flow. And basically, there's where my 2 passions at that point really collided. The passion for sort of the numbers and finance, and then the passion for software engineering. So I started to build, together with another co-founder, a solution that would actually optimize working capital and then later on predict cash flow. I would say, and fast forward now, is that we started Cashforce in 2016. We got our first raise from Michel Akkermans from Volta Ventures, and then we actually sold cash flow forecasting to enterprises. So that meant that companies like Kimberly-Clark, Unilever, Daimler of the world, those were actually our clients. So we got into real big enterprises managing their cash globally. We set up sales teams around the globe, and we actually scaled our business through partnerships. Citibank and BNP Paribas, for example, were partners. Now, my journey there was really, I was always leading go-to-market, and was very passionate about talking to these enterprises, solving sort of a real old world problem of cash forecasting, which sort of is a bit similar to Donna, ultimately, an old world problem that you're trying to solve. And throughout the journey, had several rounds of financing, but suddenly we also hit a little bit of a wall, and that wall was that our product, at some point, technologically wise, wasn't ready to scale. It was sort of 2020. So 2020, we had also then the pandemic that kicked in. So it was sort of the perfect storm that then took place, 2020, and we had to rebuild our company completely. We had to rebuild our product completely.
But didn't you, by the time also, weren't you like moved to the US or did you?
So we actually graduated through Techstars as a company, sort of the second Belgian company that ever went through Techstars. With a bit of luck, we got there. But yes, we had an office over there. And indeed, we were sort of installed in London, New York, Copenhagen. And suddenly we hit that little wall. So we had to scale down to scale up faster after that. We rebuilt the product actually completely together with a nearshore team in Poland.
Okay.
So yeah, and then after 2 years into sort of the rebuild, yeah, we were really landing one deal after the other. It went really great. The banks were constantly supporting us, and we had the choice of, let's say, continuing our own paths or, let's say, combining our forces with a larger distribution channel. And that then ultimately became the choice. And we had several possibilities to check, like, okay, how can we really scale super fast? And that then became the German-American payments player, TIS. So that led then to the exit of Cashforce.
Okay. So you had your exit then. That was in
2022.
Okay. You didn't have a long earnout then?
I basically wanted to stay with the company for at least a year, and that actually also happened, just to make sure that everyone was sort of everything was handed over, and the team could really fit in nicely. And as always, let's say there's you need to find really a way to make sure that the people, the product, everything lands correctly. Luckily, the acquisition and its purpose was really around integrating our solution quite nicely with the existing solution. So,
okay.
The existing solution of the acquirer, which was something I love to be a part of as well. So, stayed on for a year, but also realized that I would say building something new was even a passion that was even bigger.
And then you came back. You swerved around Ghent.
Yeah.
You came up with ideas, or how did you not just fell out of the sky, or how did it go?
No, it didn't fall out of the sky just suddenly. Well, there are a couple of things. So first, actually, I lost completely touch with the Ghent ecosystem, and the reason was that Cashforce was actually based out of first Herentals and then Antwerp. So it was almost like new to me, all the people in Ghent, and I basically said to myself, let's meet as many interesting people in the Ghent ecosystem as soon as possible, because I think at that time there was also lots of things happening. There were, little seeds being planted, and I felt that, but I wasn't, I didn't know the people, so
you didn't have a plan yet on this is what I want to do.
No,
getting inspiration, basically.
Getting inspiration, absolutely. Yeah. That journey was short-lived in the sense of. So one of my friends, Arne from Amavi Capital, a fund specialized in real estate. We were friends, and basically he was talking like, "Hey, Nicolas, can you help some of the companies in my portfolio potentially with your experience as a co-founder?" And one thing led to another, really. I started to talk with a couple of the CEOs of the portfolio companies, of course, to Amavi. And very quickly, I started to be engaged with 2 companies. And as you know, when you're deep into it, you really sink into it. It was a super interesting experience, but I didn't want to do that alone. So I wanted to continue to network.
But that was in real estate then?
That was in real estate, yeah. It was so there was software for real estate, so prop tech ultimately. Yeah. So it was still tech.
Yeah.
But I found it interesting to work my way into real estate, which I at first didn't really know too much about. And it was very heartwarming to see other people doing it. But at the same time, I said, like, I want to do it myself again, but not really sure what to do. Until I actually met Lorenz Bogaert, pretty randomly at an event actually organized by Amavi. I met Lorenz, and actually he was standing next to me, and I kind of remembered how he looked, and he looked at me like, I'm not sure if we know each other. So we started talking, and then one thing led to another. He, as we all know, he is obsessed by tech, but also by sales tech. He had the company Busy, started from Star Apps. So I started to a little bit collaborate and say, hey, exchange ideas. And then one of the ideas was like CRMs are filled with not so great data. And we started to brainstorm a bit about it. And it's around that time that actually Jonas came into the picture too. So we started to get to know each other.
Random coincidences.
Absolutely. So suddenly he came into the picture and he started to talk equally about salespeople on the road. And we still didn't know what to do, but we randomly started talking to salespeople, and there was 2 stories that sort of came up in this brainstorm that were related actually to my previous life at Cashforce. And one was that my sales team leader, who I was actually traveling with a lot, he was constantly talking to someone else after a meeting. So we came out of the door of a client or a prospect, and he started to talk to someone, and I didn't know who it was. But after a while, I said like, "Hey, but who are you talking to?" And the person was called Dana. So, and that person was actually the person that we hired to do a lot of other stuff than filling in CRMs. But when I asked him like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he said like, "Yeah, but I'm making sure that the CRM is filled because you asked me to do so." So I said, "Yeah, sure, but I'm not sure if that's the
Right
the way to do
use
it."
of her time then, or
Correct. So, but that led us to, and I asked him like, "Hey, but why do you do that?" Like, "Hey, but I hate filling the CRM. It's draining."
as every sales.
Voila. So, but I was against that. Like, I didn't want that. But it was sort of when Jonas and I were discussing, sort of these memories came back. His memories of field sales came back, and it was eventually then a discussion with 2 clients. One of them actually turned a client. The other one's still a prospect. But they actually said like, "Hey, Jonas, Nicolas, you're always saying like, hey, how can we with AI predict the best next step in your CRM?" That was sort of our first idea. And the person said like, "Yeah, but there's not enough data in our system to even predict anything." And we said like, "Why is that?" People are on the road all the time. And then it started to kick in that people on the road are even the worst when it comes to filling in the CRM. And that's when the idea Donna got born.
Then everything came together. Okay,
Yeah.
nice. So, and that was, now we're talking about it's
last year around May, June. Yeah.
and then so May, June, but you already raised capital by that time? No, you raised it quite quickly then?
Apologies. The time that we started these discussions was about February last year. Yeah, that's also when Jonas actually came on board and we really set up the company at that time. The raise of capital was we announced it in June, but happened in the end of April.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So then you raised, and now the world is on fire if it comes to AI. Is that something that you're feeling as well?
Yeah, I definitely feel it.
Does the
even more than
AI
last
part
year.
even make a difference, or is it? How do you see that from a? So just before you walked in, you said it's crazy for the moment, so that's great. But it's crazy in terms of people want your product. Do they still talk about AI, or is it purely they start to get to know your? Because there was a period where the AI stamp was like the thing to get doors open.
Yeah.
Are you past that, or is that still valuable?
It depends on the context. Sometimes it is still valuable. Actually, very early onwards, we said to ourselves, like, yeah, we're trying to solve a problem. I know that I sound a little bit cliche with saying that, but if we talk to corporates or enterprises, ultimately it's about, what problem are you solving? People are sitting in the car, they have unproductive time, quote unquote, and in the end, in the evening, they have to fill in the CRM. That's a world problem already existing since the very early days. And Jonas and I started to think like, hey, but we want to pitch this as a solution to a real problem. Do we need to mention AI? And it appears that actually we read an article which actually said, it's July of last year, the more you mention AI, the less actually plausible it is to close the deal.
Okay.
And we actually said like we scrap AI from the dictionary when talking to enterprises. Because they want to feel, they know it's actually inherently AI, but the more you talk about AI, the more it's perceived as
Vaporware.
Yeah, vaporware or unsure, or unsure what the outcome is.
Yeah.
While we do something where hopefully the outcome is very simple and almost defined, right? You have a context in mind. You talk with Donna from the car just by doing a phone call, and ultimately your CRM is getting filled, hopefully 100% accurate. So AI was kind of a nuisance that we want to get out of the door. And for now, actually, everyone now knows that it's powered by AI anyhow.
Yeah.
So
yeah. How maybe so you mentioned it already. It works from the car. What does Donna now do? You call her, I call her, and I tell you my feedback of a meeting.
Yeah. In fact, it starts already at the start of your day. She knows your calendar. She knows the meetings you're probably gonna have, and before the day starts, or actually while you're traveling to the first meeting, she gives you a call in the car.
So she calls you. You get a call, Donna.
Yes.
And how do people respond to that?
Well, it's actually very positive.
Okay.
Because at first people almost laugh, right? It's like, oh, now there's someone calling me in the car that I don't know that's gonna speak to me. Now, I think over in 1 year time, everyone will find this very normal. But right now, it's like, that's interesting. Now, she starts to talk, and she starts to brief you on the meeting that's upcoming. And it's quite simple. After the meeting you just had, it might be that you had a factory visit, you were at the pharmacy across the counter, or you sat down next to the plant in a manufacturing meeting, and you jump into the car. Donna knows that your meeting is done, and she calls you again.
What if your meeting runs out?
Yeah, so as normal, you would get a missed call, so you can call back Donna.
Okay.
Yeah, so you also get like a notification, almost like a notification, like a WhatsApp. Hey, you missed me. Can you call me back? And the idea is that you can tap and
just dials back.
It dials back, and she knows what you're talking about. And that's the moment that you debrief about the meeting, and then you're driving potentially to the next meeting, so the cycle repeats.
So the debrief, you explain, this was the meeting. Do you require like a certain structure of because typically you would say, okay, after debrief, you want maybe to know what's the pain, do they have budget, like the typical questions.
Yeah.
Do you expect that, or how does that work? Or does she ask questions like, okay, you didn't talk about budget?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea? How does that?
Yeah, so for every company that's a bit different, because some have a very structured sales playbook, and some of them have, let's say, a playbook in draft but not really utilized yet. Some have just 4 basic questions that they want to answer. So actually, Donna can be trained on each of those 3 scenarios. What simply means that you put in a playbook into sort of the Donna system, and Donna will actually understand that playbook, and she will cue the person talking to her
to get the information that the playbook requires.
Yeah, exactly. And she'll prompt you when, like, hey, you didn't talk about next steps. Like, what did you discuss? She'll do it gently and and friendly.
Nice. So then she asks you the questions, you give answers. It ends up in your CRM. Where does it fail? Does it fail?
Yeah. Well, sometimes you. So I would say it's not necessary that it fails, but of course, some companies have very, I would say, complex structures in their CRM. And we let that learn to Donna. And in the end, everything has to be filled in. And obviously, it's always good if it's connected with like an agenda item where you know that you have a meeting with John Tyson, for example. But let's assume for a second that you did a spontaneous walk-in and in a store, and that you say, hey, I had a meeting with Nicolas Christiaen, but Nicolas Christiaen is nowhere to be found in the CRM system, right? Then, of course, it has to link with that, that contact or search that contact. That's, of course, the part where not everything is perfect yet, but we're really working on that to make that even better.
Yeah, but even that in the future, it feels like solvable. But so that means then what do? You just take the conversation and you store it somewhere, or that's just a use case that you'll figure out later on?
Yeah, No, so we actually integrate very neatly with the underlying CRM systems.
Okay.
So we're integrated with a Salesforce, a HubSpot, a Microsoft Dynamics. And the cool part is that we are able to connect to their sort of metadata layer, meaning that, very simply said, if there's a custom field, a custom object that needs to be filled in, we can actually do that. And it's sort of that, call it enterprise level integration, that really is very unique in combination with the calling. And those two things combined make it quite neat for a field sales.
So you're now at this point, you've been doing this now less than a year or almost a year.
Sort of, year and a half.
When did you have the first version of Donna?
The first production version of Donna was
or
there.
First users, maybe.
The first user was sort of in July. We launched actually end of June last year, and in the first weeks of July, literally into the holidays, we got our sort of first users. At that time, it was, let's say, just a WhatsApp voice note to voice note conversation, which was very cool because you could do it everywhere, but not really in the car. And now that has sort of completely changed since we did the full voice to voice conversation.
What was the biggest? Why was starting in WhatsApp the easier part for integration purposes?
Yeah, so the CRM integration, quote unquote, was already there at that time, but then WhatsApp is actually easier in terms of there's a little bit delay that you can put in, and that's basically acceptable to the user. But if you're in the car and you have actually a real voice-to-voice conversation, you cannot really accept that much delay, because otherwise it feels like a completely unnatural conversation. And that's, of course, we want to be a full natural, low latency, but also good reasoning. And I think that's the bit that's not that easy. If you do good reasoning plus understanding what is the context of your CRM, plus the low latency, that cocktail wasn't something that we had already tackled at that time.
Yeah. So, and that's the challenges that you went through.
Yeah.
And then you could have pure real-time conversations, basically.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I haven't tested it. I should. If you have a conversation, because I've seen I'm not sure if you saw them, or maybe you're using their technology, QTI. That's like a French lab, which they specialize in everything on, for instance, language, and they have a demo where they do a real-time conversation with their assistant. But what you notice there is that she's a bit too eager. Yeah. As in, it's sometimes like she wants to speak before you finish.
Exactly.
Those are like not easy challenges. Have you been able to tackle those?
Yeah. So what we would internally call collisions.
Yeah.
Because indeed, sort of the voice-to-voice collisions, that was actually one of the first things to sort of correct for. And it starts already from the very beginning. So you pick up the phone, and basically, who says first hello?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's like, if you have that conversation with someone else, it's like, huh! And then, but then that's where the point where also, if you don't nail that, first time you accept it, second time you become a bit annoyed, and the third time you're like, fuck this.
Correct.
But so you solved it.
Yeah, indeed. It's I would say it's a lot of testing. It's also a lot of testing with first users. We had the, I would say, idea to put white glove clients to make sure that they put their hands on Donna, and that actually worked out very well. So
white glove clients, do they mean those that are very alpha clients? You mean really testing and open for the fact that things will fail?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what you mean with it?
Yeah.
How did you convince those people to do that? Because that's not so easy for everyone.
That's correct, but it refers a little bit to the fact that sort of that solving a problem, I have to be very honest, when we first talked to a couple of clients, we were amazed by the reactions they gave themselves. Because when we came into the room and said, hey, you can talk to Donna and your CRM will get filled, it's solving CRM.
They were like, wow.
Yeah, they were like really like, wow, because
I can imagine.
CRM adoption, it's a problem for everyone. Sales efficiency, it's a current problem because everyone needs to work more efficient, and so if these two problems together, it came together quite nicely for us and for a lot of the clients. So to be very honest, not a lot of convincing was required. with some companies. We had hundreds of requests in the first few weeks that we launched, and we had to filter, obviously, to the ones that we really said, like, hey, these are going to be our first early testers and adopters.
Champions,
yeah. And that's, of course, when you come into all these issues, like, indeed, Donna says, like, hey, where the person already is saying back, like, hey. One small anecdote is that ultimately, when Donna picks up the phone and say, hey, I'm Donna, I'm here to help you, it's basically you can't interrupt her. When she's saying that, you can't interrupt her. But she listens already. So these are the small tricks ultimately that make it then work.
Yeah. Cool. It's interesting because what I was also thinking is we had a conversation with Peter Butteniers from ML Legal before, and is that what I always said is that, and I think that's the future. The reason why LLMs are successful and will be, or technology, or what the main benefactor of that new technology is basically we've always adapted to computers. Those ugly SAP screens. Okay, HubSpot and Salesforce look nicer, but they're still quite annoying. But we had to adapt because computers want structure, they want databases, they need structure to operate well. Now, given AI, we can change that back to having people use their preferred interface. And actually, it's interesting to see, like, for ML Legal, it's lawyers and text, and they get in their text suite. And for sales, it's talking. They don't like to write, so a chatbot probably not even work.
No.
But the fact that they can just talk it's their interface.
Totally.
What also strikes me is that you're both, and there's quite a lot of other great startups in the scene right now, like Quire and like Wobby and whatever. You have a lot of them, which all are technologically a bit in the same area, but in terms of business, you go really deep in a certain niche. Was that on purpose? How did you come about there? And do you think that that's the future for all? Is that like the new SaaS approach? How do you see that?
Now, a couple of you raise a couple of very interesting points, and maybe tackling the first one first is like that niche focus. For us, that was almost, I would say, the most pivotal moment of Donna. When Jonas and I were pitching sort of that first idea of call it the next best step for your sales process, it was super broad. We were talking to anybody, a tech company, a non-tech company. And when talking to tech companies, everyone said, yeah, but I have these 5 solutions already. Potentially not doing the same, but sort of in the same field.
At least conceptually, they don't see the difference.
Indeed. Not without really deep explanation. But then we started to talk a bit, call it enterprises and companies that do not always do their sales online. So that sort of made a very big click because today you have a lot of online note takers. We were testing them one by one and saying, like, how could we do better? How could we be a better integration with the CRM? So there were two big pivots that we did. We pivoted from online space to field sales, which is
a huge change in terms of technology and customer and the way you go to market and the types of clients.
Totally. The types of clients are totally different. The way they operate, their CRM is totally different. That was also a big aha moment when we also realized that their CRM is the worst in terms of data quality. And then obviously it also changes the interface, as you said, like an online meeting can be captured by an online note taker.
Which is a lot easier.
Yeah. Indeed, the context is restricted. You're behind the screen.
The speaker diarization, it's very easy to know who's talking. It's all a lot easier. And typically it's also in English.
It's typically in English as well. So, but speaker diarization, you touch a good point. It's very simple. So when you move to the field sales, it gets a lot more complex. But Jonas and I, and together with our CTO Xander and Lander, we said like, yeah, but we like complexity because there is where we can actually make the difference. So we dove into that space because we said like, if we don't do that, you're going to be eaten very fast by everyone around you. Plus, it's so much, I would say, nicer to build from a really differentiating start and then continue to innovate further. And also because it's so interesting that I would say field sales haven't been served as well by any SaaS solution before.
Yeah.
And sort of all these elements together made it quite easy for us. And it was suddenly we saw something, we said, like, we need to go after it. Referring to your second point.
How long did it take you to get there? Like, the reason I also hear a lot of people like, I have an idea, and they're looking around and they feel like, oh, I need to take the first idea I have because I will miss out. And how did you balance that idea of let's not go too fast because it needs to be a really good idea, but also if you would have waited another year, you probably might have been too late.
It's very true. It's very true. And I would say the only thing you can think of is like, hey, why didn't we start with that like 3 or 4 months or 5 months even earlier? Then we would be even further. Of course, never look in the past, look most of the time to the future. Ultimately, it's being flexible before you hit, call it problem-solution fit, because right now we're past that stage. There's a problem, there's a solution. But when you're trying to find that problem-solution fit, you have to be super flexible and continuously talking to actual clients.
So in terms of development and everything, you keep it very low and basic, just to be able to move quickly.
Yeah, I almost think we didn't really develop anything at the time. So when we raised our capital, actually, at the time we had a really mock-up version in Figma, as a lot of these things happen today, and we had sort of parts of the software. But to be very honest, everything we threw away because suddenly we found that is going to be something that the field sales is going to be our focus, and the would say not the note taking per se, but then the calling and the interaction with an assistant, that would be our focus. So we threw everything away actually at that time. So be super flexible is the thing that I can.
So and you were saying. That niche, so you felt that's the niche we need to dive into. But you also quickly realized then, because in the AI sphere, in the LLM sphere, and everything around it, if you don't take that niche, you're not building a moat. You're not building anything that is defensible. How do you feel about that now? Do you think you're won't HubSpot say tomorrow, "Oh, we have that feature too"? How strong do you think you are?
Yeah. So first of all, we believe already through choosing that very specific niche, so the field sales versus call it the desk workers. We're really targeted towards non-desk workers. We already have an edge in terms of the focus that it requires to tackle that problem. It is just a lot more than we even initially anticipated. Because as you say, like, there is complexity. You wake up in the morning and ultimately the first thing is you're sitting at the coffee table and you need to be prepared. Is Donna calling you then? Is she leaving a notification? There's lots of little complexities that need to be solved. So we know that, of course, bigger players have larger resources. But do they have actually the same focus to tackle exactly that problem and on so deeply like we do? Because the last bit is, as explained, filling in a CRM is one thing, but then filling in a CRM that is customized for every enterprise client, that's another thing. So there we kind of built also something strong that makes it very flexible to adopt or to install or onboard in very, very small amount, very short time frame. So
what you're saying, if I'm right, is that that last mile, that really like end part, that's where your mode is, and it's also very hard because I'm assuming it's also something that evolves, as in it improves every week or whatever period, because you start learning, okay, we can do this a little bit better there, and that collection of knowledge and experience that you then put into the system, that's very hard to hack or to build in a very short period. It's just something that takes time and understanding of the market.
Correct. Yeah. It's I would almost say like if you would structure it or make it more abstract, you have first the context of your CRM, which is super unstructured. Then you have the fact that you have a full voice-to-voice, real-time conversation about that exact context. And then it's making sure that you orchestrate all these actions in detail in an, call it, customized CRM. If you collate that all together, it's indeed, as you say, it's 3 complex items on its own. Collated together makes it very complex to, call it, replicate. But at the same time, being very modest about that, our CTO Xander, every week, together with his entire team, is thinking like, what else of architectures, technologies are existing on the market that we could utilize
to solve the problem better.
To solve the problem even better. Or which pieces of software do we put on the side and replace it by new pieces, because it's all happening and it's so fast.
But how do you then think? So you've probably been following the evolution that it's going fast. We're going to more agentic AI, or basically the systems become smarter. How do you feel like at some point will it be smart enough that it will just say, okay, I know with CRM what it is and I don't need the integration. I'm now going that a bit maybe very far. How do you think about that? Do you see that as a threat or a possibility?
I think you could see it both ways, for sure. I think every day we're trying to see what new technologies could be achieved, or could we make ourselves have been made in the market to fulfill that dream of the field sales. I think we believe that as long as we focus as a team on field sales and making the entire journey, by the way, we're not finished yet. There is route planning, there is offer creation. There's a lot of things that field sales do in a less structured way than typically desk sales would do. So given that we focus just on the entire journey of the field sales, we know in each step that a new technology, like you described, is actually an opportunity for us. We see it that way.
The technology is becoming better and better, going very fast. Do you think, so there's the idea of agents and autonomous companies and all of these things? How far will Donna go as being almost, I'll put it bluntly, why is she not the future field sales? How do you see that? How do you think about that?
No, very good question. I think we get the question a lot in the sense of, but is she not doing my job completely? Now we feel that ultimately in complex B2B selling, there's going to be always a need for the human element. So again, it's been repeated by a couple of people, but we strongly believe that the human people is what's going to differentiate, together with the agents that you use, and you use typically the best ones, hopefully to succeed even better. But the human part is going to be the differentiator between the salespeople that sell B2B stuff, whether that's been products or whether that's been services. So for us, completely autonomous, that's never going to be the case, we believe, in terms of selling. However, everything, when you think of sort of the administration that needs to be done throughout the entire day, whether that's planning the day, whether that's just going from one meeting to the other, whether that's taking a quick call or making sure that the information that you got from a complaint is sent right to customer service, just doing all that stitching, I call it stitching of admin from one person to the other, and gathering the complexity or gathering the context throughout the day to make your next meeting more successful, that is going to be replaced completely by AI. That I totally believe, and it's going to be, as being said today, in a multi-agentic way, right? Every little task will be an agent, whether that's our agent or an agent that we utilize as part of the journey. We believe in that concept. And then there's that orchestration that understands, like, hey, now this task needs to be executed. It's going to be it will need to be a very smart orchestration. But yes, that's a future for sure.
How do you think, like, you've had quite an international part with Cashforce? With Donna, you're now mainly in Belgium and the Netherlands.
For now.
Yeah, of course, for now. But how do you look at it given the current state of Europe in terms of AI and even geopolitics, if you will? But maybe first on the AI part, because or mainly on the AI part, where we don't have any large players.
Yeah.
Do you see that? I'll put it differently. I'm not sure what you're using as AI, but let's say it would be OpenAI,
Yeah.
and Trump decides tomorrow, Europe, no access to OpenAI. It's too much of a power for us. If you're not paying enough, we
Yeah.
close it down, or we just raise taxes with 25%.
Yeah.
Something he would never do, but okay. How do you feel about that?
So, in fact, we already calculate that in our design choices. We understand that, let's say, because of the previous point, software is evolving so fast. Also, the underlying models, think about DeepSeek suddenly coming up and being so much cheaper, faster, etc. So we have designed a system that every component, in a way, could be replaced by another component. And that's critical because of, as you said, geopolitics could even play a role, but just general evolution and we all understand that sometimes there's some breakthroughs.
I think that's the clear part.
Yeah.
But what if, because that's basically also something that you're hearing in the narrative, it comes to AI, like now they're looking into, again, locking out chips from China, making that stronger again. What if the US has the strongest models? I'll put it different. Do you, I'm giving you answer maybe myself, but
Go ahead.
how do you think about the fact that in Europe we only have the Mistral or a Silo having models? Is that something that you are? How do you see that? Are you comfortable with it? Do you see it as a challenge? Do you see it as a problem? As a company, how do you plan to deal with it? So, in terms of technical architecture, I get it. You make it swappable. That's important. That's the easy part.
You hedge basically.
Basically.
Also, organization-wise, we already have hedged our choices in the sense that we already set up our US entity. So we know that we also need to be there potentially, maybe even swap if there is a time where that actually makes a lot of sense. We said with Donna, because of the field sales, they are globally. We have users from in Mexico all the way to in Indonesia. So we know that our purpose is global. And we need to go where the best models are, where the best AI can be utilized again to solve that problem. I would say I'm sure it's not the perfect answer, and nobody has the perfect answer. But at least hedge your bets.
You're well prepared, let's say.
But exactly, be prepared to suddenly from one day to another change your approach and strategy. A bit like the flexibility at the very start when designing our solution.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And on that one, I'm going to thank you, Nicolas. It was very interesting.
Thank you, Davio.
And let's keep the conversation going.
All right, cool. Likewise.
Thanks.